Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. I'm working on the Raven 1500 and I've come down to one of the moments of truth. This hole right here that you can see, that goes, that's just covering there. You should be able to see that that is a hole that is drilled through, and there's a large piece of plywood here, a strengthener that's built into the wing structure. And that is so that you can do a discus throw. Now, a discus throw, depending on whether you're left-handed or right-handed, means that there is something on the tip of the wing that allows you to grab with two fingers, and you basically just put the pads of your fingers on it, and you swing the glider. Now, I'll demonstrate this later. If you're watching this, chances are you know what a discus launch throw is. Now, some planes use this type, where it's got two nice little finger tabs, and as you can see, your fingers just rest right on those. It just feels natural. One of the things that they've done to keep the price down on the Raven 1500, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, it's just there's necessity, is to use a carbon fiber post. Now, there's people who still use the carbon fiber post technique. Basically, you just pass that through the wing and glue it in place, and you rest your fingers on this. I prefer this type, and so I'm going to be modifying another small change I'm making to this kit. So also, I'm a lefty. And aside from the fact that I'm left-handed, there are good reasons to launch your DLG with your left hand, even if you're right-handed, to get used to it. Because you're usually, the throttle hand is your left hand, and gliders don't have throttles, so you're not using that. Usually your right hand is your elevator aileron control and other switches. So if your right hand is being used during the beginning of the launch to swing the plane, it's not on the radio. And so if you need to react quickly, give up elevator, or make some control to keep the plane from doing something you don't want it to do, you've got to first get your hand to the radio from being extended after just having thrown the glider. So there's a lot of people who recommend learning to throw left-handed even if you're right-handed. So what I've done, as you can see here, I've already cut away some covering. I've done that top and bottom, and I've notched the wing to make that surface perpendicular to the line of the fuselage and to the line of the center line of the wing. Now, this type, I've got a couple of options. I could thin down the wing surface here enough to be able to slip that over the wing. As you can see, it's capable of doing that. The other way would be to cut a notch in here, which would be pretty difficult to do, and then just squeeze this thing together and slide it in. Whichever route I decided to take, I still was considering, and probably will, drill a hole through this tab where this hole is going to be, and cut just enough of this carbon fiber rod off to pass through this and through the wing, thus anchoring it far more strongly than glue alone could ever do, because there's going to be a physical piece holding it on. So I've thought about it a bit, and I think what I'm going to do is, instead of trying to cut a slot into there that's going to be deep enough for this, I'm going to take the good old Dremel out, and I'm going to sand this surface down thin enough to be able to slide this tab into place. And we'll see how that goes. Okay, this is a teeny bit embarrassing, but this is what happens when you mod stuff. Especially when you're changing something that you didn't build scratch up. These pieces of plywood don't go all the way through. it looked like something that has been, you know, it was cut away and this was sunk in there. And even when you look down into the hole, it looked like it was, you know, solid plywood. It looked like it was one piece. But it's actually only a thin piece of plywood on top. And once you get down through that, you're into soft balsa, which just is not going to provide the strength that this is going to need. This is going to take a lot of stress. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tool. I did a video on this. Oops. This is the Great Plains slot machine. They're hard to come by, and the 1mm set of blades is even harder to come by. I got lucky on this. If you can find one of these, they can be really handy for certain things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a slot into the wing. I'm basically going to cut the balsa out that's in between these two layers of plywood. And likewise, what if it is over here, I'm going to cut that away also. And I'm going to slide in a thin flooring of plywood that then this can slide over. So this is going to be a good bit of hack and slash, but I think I'm going to end up with a functional at the end. You know, hindsight being 20/20, instead of grinding down into this, I would have been much better off going with my first plan, which was to use this tool and other tools to try to cut, you know, straight in between here. You know, it's the kind of thing you don't know until you start cutting, and then, you know, it's too late. Oops. So there's a few things I can try. I'm going to start with this. This is the least invasive. Worst case scenario, I'm just going to cut a piece of this off altogether and rebuild, basically, and then recover. So we'll see how it goes. I'll take some snapshots along the way as I go through this. Okay, making progress on the repair. Using that saw as well as this this micro saw, I was able to cut a pretty good slot along here and get some good depth on this side as well. I have taken this piece of 1/32, it's about 1mm thick plywood, and well, I'm gonna have to put the camera down for a second so I can show you. I started, after inserting this in here as far as I could get it, I started the arc there, and then flipped the wing over, went to the complete side and finished this arc just to get the swipe there. Here we have the 1/32 inch plywood, and as you can see, it gets almost a 1/4 inch over here and a good 1.25 inches on this side into the wing there. So that's a pretty good repair piece right there. Now I just need to trim or make the marks where I'm gonna how far this is gonna go in there, and then trim, and then glue everything together. So again, I'll do this step by step for you. See, I mean, believe me, when I got drilled through this plywood into soft balsa, I had a pit in my stomach. It's like, ooh, I've just botched this wing. And I definitely screwed it up good, but considering all things, I don't think it's going to make a big weight difference. I can always add a little weight to the other end and balance the wing out perfectly. As far as weight goes, there's not going to be any aerodynamic penalty, and I'm going to get to use the tab piece that I wanted, left-handed, and I think I'm going to have a nice solid repair here. I don't think there's going to be any problems. So let me move on to the next step, and I'll continue the video in a moment. Okay, so here is my new piece, my patch. And the nice thing about 1/32 inch ply and 1/64 inch ply is that it's really sturdy stuff, especially the 1/32. The 1/64 is very flexible. You can get some pretty nice curves with it, some pretty tight curves. And you can actually cut this stuff with a good sharp pair of scissors without damaging it all. In fact, you can get sometimes better cuts than you would with a blade. So I'm just gonna put down the camera for a second and test fit this and show you how it fits in. I've already tested it, but I want to show you how it looked in and then out, or out and then in. Okay, so this is what it looks like in place, and I've notched it so that the tab can slide in there right to where I wanted it, and I'll show you that. So here we have the tab in place, and as you can see, it fits right in there with the notch. I'm not going to show you the gluing part. That's just going to be tedious. I'm going to be using epoxy to fill in this crack here, or to fill that slot. And over here, I want the strongest bond possible. I'm sorry about the camera. I'm doing this by hand instead of using a tripod, but it's everything's so close up. I wanted to give you the detail. And then the upper area here, once this tab is glued in place, there's going to be some surface to fill, and I'll probably use some 15-minute epoxy with a high concentration of microballoons. If you don't know what microballoons are, this is microballoons. This is an old K&B. I'm not even sure if K&B is in business anymore. This stuff I've had for decades, because it doesn't take much. It's a ultra fine powder. It's actually microscopic glass balloons. If you look at the way stuff bounces in here, it almost bounces around like a liquid, but it's completely dry. It's very interesting material. It works great as a filler. You can mix this with glues and have a much larger volume, and yet have it weigh a fraction of what it would weigh if it was all glue without any filler in it. And, you know, once it's done, you can sand it. You know, it says it all right here. Light, strong, easy to sand. There you go. Micro balloons, glass micro balloons, if you can believe it. It's true. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do the gluing. Yes, that's a flashlight. Sometimes these things come in super handy. I'm going to go ahead, do the gluing. I'm not going to bother any further with photographs. I think you guys got the point of what I'm doing. As you can see, again, this just slides right out. You know, a little bit of work, a little bit of thinking on how to solve the problem, and I've come up with something that's going to be as strong as the original. I don't think it's going to be quite as strong as if I had notched that to begin with. If I had known that this was just 2 layers of, it's probably exactly this. It's probably 1/34 inch ply. It might even be 1/64. Basically, it's just a doubler, like you would have on a fuselage, a doubler where you've got wood, and then inside the fuselage you have another piece of wood glued to it, usually plywood, that adds much more strength, but gives you the softer balsa wood outer finish so that you can sand and shape. Basically, these are 2 doublers on the outside that lock these wooden pieces together here, 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 and that provides the structural strength to the wingtip to be able to take you grabbing this wing by the wingtip and hurling the entire length of the wing plus the fuselage into the air.